Hello and welcome to Hair Trends 2023. This video has been a tradition on the Ellebangs channel and it's January, it's a new year, so let's get into it. So let's start with color. So the trend is definitely more muted, still seeing a ton of sandy tones. I think Hailey Bieber, a lot of the young celebrities who were definitely more blonde a couple of years ago have all kind of just slightly made their color more subtle. So wherever that is for you, so if you're like an extreme blonde, just something that's a little bit more muted than what you have right now. So think 2 to 3 shades darker than what you have. So the beauty in this is that it's not the same color trend necessarily for everybody. It can definitely vary in terms of levels, but the tone definitely more muted. Think mushroomy tones, nothing too ashy anymore as we kept seeing for years and years a couple of years ago. But the beauty in the trend this year with color is that it's a little bit of one or the other. So either more muted colors or the really, really bright blonde bombshell, like Hollywood, big voluminous hair kind of style. All right, next let's talk about shape and cuts. So we're still seeing a ton of the wolf cut, the shaggy kind of mullet. This is definitely more saved for the edgy person. If you're kind of sick of every other haircut that's out there and you want something a little bit different, this is definitely one for you. It's fun, it's young, it's effortless. It's all about like embracing the texture you have and really having the cut and the layers really suit the texture you have rather than other way around. So this is going to be a cut that's just really easy to style, to manipulate, and just kind of like a wash and go kind of style. And then what I would say in terms of cut is the most in is layers. Layers, 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 layers. Just way more layer than we've seen in the last, I would say, even 10 years. I feel like in the last 10 years has been more about growing out your layers and having really long layers, and kind of just a little bit longer layers means that you have a shorter distance of layers. It doesn't necessarily mean that your hair is long. So you can have a bob and still have long layers, versus a more heavily layered haircut means that from the bottom of your ends to the shortest layer that you have, there is a huge gap. I feel like this look is very reminiscent of like the 90s supermodel, where it's just like feathered, very voluminous around the face, a ton of interest, whereas again, for the longest time, we've just been seeing way more long and a lot less kind of emphasis or interest brought to the face. And again, I must say with all trends, whether it be clothing, hair, makeup, you should absolutely find the trend that suits you, your features, and your style. The point of looking through trends is finding one that's like, that one would totally work for me. I like the way that looks. That's the one thing you should kind of update and somewhat follow. This does not mean, you know, like, oh, blonde is no longer in. I love my blonde hair. Let me go completely change my hair. Absolutely not. I think the more we evolve and the more styles and trends change, it really is more of kind of adapting to individuality. And from day one, I've always said you should be wearing the trend, not the trend wearing you. It should always feel organic to you and like you feel really comfortable in this style, cut, color, and never like, this is so not me, but this is trendy, I must wear it. It'll always just look off. So always opt for something that you feel good in. I always say a good haircut for you is a mixture of something that is trending, that is fresh, and mixed with a haircut that you've had in the past that you love. Looking at your past hairstyles is a great inspiration because you know your hair can do that and you know your features can do that. So sometimes bringing in a photo of, say, a celebrity is amazing, but if they have completely different features from you or different hair type, of course the look's going to look different on you. So that's just my little hot tip, a mixture of a cut that you keep eyeing or color and a mixed with something that you've had in the past that you really love. A combination of those two is your next best haircut or color. All right, in terms of cut, the French girl bob is just, I feel like we've seen different lengths of bobs in the last couple of years be a big trend. It's always very chic, but this specific cut is the French girl bob for the reason that there's a little bit more playfulness. It's not just that sleek bob that we've been seeing that I feel like all the Kardashians at one point had, where it was just dark hair, one length, pretty short off the shoulders. This is, I would say, almost a little bit shorter than that, but there's a little bit of wave. There's a little bit of like a natural texture in there that just makes it feel so personal and so like unique to the person. So it's not an exact shape. It's just basically the beauty of this cut is that it'll look a little bit different kind of on everybody. And the first thing that we're seeing too with this shorter bob is the addition of bangs. And I feel like for the longest time, whether it was the lob or a shorter bob or like a very sleek, clean bob, it was always without bangs. And the one thing I must say about this style and this trend is that it surprisingly looks so good on so many different face shapes. And I guess my piece of advice here would be, if this is something that you've been thinking about, it most likely will look good on you. So I think one of the main things to know whether something is good for you is how much do you want it. If you keep eyeing the style and the look, it probably will work for you. All right, another thing that I'm going to touch on, which is also a little bit of shape, is the fluffed out curls. I'm talking about letting your texture show through, or the more defined curls where you kind of let them air dry, but you use an amazing, curl gel or a defining product on the hair. This is huge. I personally am such a fan of this style. I naturally have really wavy hair, definitely not curls like this, but anyone out there that has these natural, beautiful curls, now is the time to absolutely embrace them. I mean, it always is the time to do that, but I feel like now, if you already naturally have these beautiful curls, absolutely wear them with pride. It is such a beautiful look, and if you just have it naturally, it just looks so much more beautiful. But of course, there are ways of achieving this look. You just have to use a much smaller barrel curling iron and use much smaller pieces of hair when wrapping it around the barrel or the wand. And then using like I said, a more like defining curl product as opposed to brushing it out. But yeah, absolutely love this trend. All right, and this one is going back to color, but the reason why I kind of left it to its own category is because it is that unique. And that is the high contrast of color. So as I mentioned, it's either like the really bright blonde, more solid, so not a lot of contrast, and then the more sandy, mushroomy tones, again, not a ton of contrast, just basically a little bit deeper and warmer than the color you had before. But this is the high contrast, so it's an accent of color to the hair. So it's either going to be like chunkier highlights or the thick money piece. Now, when this trend came out and it was like, no root smudging on that TikTok money piece, and it was just almost looked untoned and just kind of like a really raw lift, I was not a fan of this. But if you are lifted correctly, meaning you have the right blonde that suits your skin tone, this look has definitely grown on me, and I think the contrast is so edgy in comparison to everything else that's in. So I think this is great for that person that has naturally dark hair and is just looking to add a pop, or like the photo here where you do have the brighter streaks, just brightening up the face with that face framing piece. All right, another one, we did see this a lot last year, but I feel like it's becoming more of just like this organic, like lived in kind of trend, and that is to use your hair as an accessory. So adding small braids to, normally a braid I feel like is to contain the hair, or it's there to make it like sleek, But this is really just, look at my accessory. Instead of a hair clip, instead of, you know, like a hair jewel or something that you would add to the hair just for fun, that's what these braids are. So braids as accessories in the hair, I think will still continue to be huge. Another thing too that you can do is either have a colored streak into that braid, just to add a little bit more interest with color. But I think this is still going to be really big this year. Okay, and lastly, we have to touch on bangs. I feel like for the last 2-3 years, curtain bangs have been making such a big bang, no pun intended. And we're definitely still seeing that, but I feel like now it's definitely more about the wispy bang. So think almost like really 90s, really thin bangs. And I feel like the ones that I always see that look really good are a little bit of a curtain bang that's growing out. So you do have a little bit more kind of interest and swoopiness on the side, and then you have that centerpiece be a little bit more of that wispy bang. So the difference between a wispy bang versus a more solid bang is how much of your hair you're bringing into the bangs. So basically when you're deciding to make the cut and creating bangs, you have to decide how far back from the hairline, how much hair you want to grab to create bangs with. And so to create that wispy bang, it's really just, I would say, like less than half an inch, probably a 1/4 inch worth of hair that you're kind of bringing forward and, you know, snipping to create bangs. Now, the beauty in this is that because you are using such smaller amount of hair, it's not as big of a commitment. And say you are done with having bangs, it's a little bit easier to kind of manipulate and incorporate into the rest of your hair and then slowly grow them out. Whereas the curtain bang, because you do have a more significant amount of hair that is creating those bangs, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to incorporate them just into the rest of your hair and pretend you don't have bangs. Now, I've kind of given my opinion on each trend and whether I like it or not. And obviously most of these trends I'm a fan of, that's why I'm talking about them. I feel like even if it's something that I keep seeing that I feel like is a huge trend, but I'm not a fan of, it would be weird for me to be like, hey, this is a trend, go get it. And I feel like with curtain bangs, everyone that got them, I was like, oh my gosh, upgrade, amazing, this looks great on them. Whereas the wispy bang, it's like, I always just look at it and I'm always like, I liked her hair before the wispy bangs. So again, if this is something that you're kind of like looking to dip your toe into some bangs, this is a great way. Just being honest, it's not my favorite look, but it is a very easy kind of style to incorporate into your hair or the haircut that you already have. All right, so those are my trend picks, my predictions for 2023. A little bit of what we've been seeing, not only on the runway, but also real life. And that is something that I just quickly wanted to touch on. When I do think of any trend, obviously my industry is hair, so I look at hair first, but it's always important to look at the big picture. And to me, the big picture is beauty, makeup, fashion, and seeing like kind of what the trend is and what the story is telling. And I feel like the trend that we're getting out of was very casual hair. Think like beach waves. It was beach waves to the red carpet. It was beach waves with jeans. It was just more casual, like effortless looking hair with, I feel, more dressy kind of fashion. Whereas I feel like not only after the pandemic, but I feel like clothing and fashion, just the trend has been definitely going towards way more relaxed fit, way more casual. It just gets more and more casual, I feel like, every year. And I watched this like documentary at the beginning of the pandemic talking about fashion trends and why they happen. And lifestyle is one of the biggest influences in what is fashionable. And I used to think that designers created what they wanted and was like, here, you should wear this, but they're actually, it's kind of the other way around. They listen to what is going on in the world, and they're predicting what you're going to need for the next year. So I felt like the second that I saw fashion from that perspective, it kind of like changed my world, and I understood the casualness that we keep seeing in fashion, and it makes more sense. If you think about what fashion was for women 100, 200 years ago, it's just like, how would you work? Like, this is an outfit that would take you like an hour to put on. You could barely sit. It's not like a job you could, I mean, it's not an outfit that you could really do most jobs in. So we've obviously gotten more comfortable, but still, you know, looking good. So I now understand the more focus on casual clothing, and I get it, and I'm starting to really love it. So I feel like the style that we're evolving more into, in terms of how hair and fashion and makeup all kind of combines, is I feel like we're so much more casual with clothing. We're more about relaxed fits. Again, so that we can move better, we can feel better, but I feel like hair and makeup is definitely making a comeback in that, like, way more dressy, way more kind of effort on your skincare, on your makeup, on your hair. So yeah, I kind of love the new transition of how hair, fashion, and beauty kind of mixes together. So yeah, I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope it's inspired you to maybe just change up your look a little bit. So if you found this video helpful, or it has inspired you to change up your look a little bit, please go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell if you haven't already. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.